Welcome to the podcast. It starts with you, with me, Vic O'Farrell. I ask my guests, by understanding their own behaviours and personality style, what impact on their lives, both personally and professionally, has there been? What is it like to live and work with someone of your style? I mean, this is not about labelling people, putting people in boxes, or an excuse for bad behaviour. It's about recognising, understanding and respecting that we're all different. And what impact can you have on others by looking in the mirror? Because it starts with you. So here we are, another episode of It Starts With You. And I am delighted today to be joined by Amy Rowlinson, who you probably will, if you've been listening to all of these or watching all of these, know that Amy was actually my first guest, but she turned the tables on me and interviewed me. So I thought, I've got to have you back, Amy, and turn the tables on you. So would you like to introduce yourself to the viewers and listeners of who you are, what you do, and an understanding of what your personality type is?
Absolutely. And thank you very much, Vicky, for having me back. And if you'd asked me that question of who I am and what do I do a couple of years ago, it would be very different from today because I am now a published author and one who has been shortlisted for the Business Book Awards in the work and life category. And I'm going to lead with that because that is something that I've been wanting to do and achieve for a long time. So, yes, I see purpose at the heart of everything I do, and I shine a light on what's possible when you focus on why. And I do that in three main ways. That's through my coaching work, my writing, and podcasting. Maybe there's another one. I do it through speaking. So, how I shine a light on what's possible is through having a podcast called Focus on Why, which I launched 5 years ago. My goodness, a lockdown experience that was. But I do believe that every moment matters. And as a purpose coach, I really do believe that purpose is at the heart of every conversation, of every business transaction, if done well. And yeah, it's about knowing what your purpose is and creating a life that has purpose at the heart.
So obviously I know you. I've worked with you. You're a good friend now, and and I've read your book as well, which is amazing. But for those that don't really understand it, what do you mean by a purposeful life?
It's a good question. And it will be very different for every individual. A purposeful life is unique to you. So it's what it is that is meaningful to you. And how do you know what's meaningful to you? Well, that is the critical question. It's about understanding who you are. And again, this is something that even I thought, I know who I am. I really didn't. And it was the lockdown experience that it came to the fore again, that I'd been swept up with living out other people's lives and other people's expectations, even though I'd gone through that process again 5 years previous to that. So understanding who you are is at the foundation of your creating your purposeful way of life. And that is, again, probably understanding your core values. Your core values sit at the heart of every choice and every decision that you make, even if you're not aware of that. That's what's going on. So I had to dig deep for myself again in lockdown and just remind myself of what is it that is important to me? What do I really value? What really matters to me? And it was helping others to understand how they can live this purposeful life. Purpose is your overarching intention. It's the overarching intention that guides your direction in life. And it's whatever you choose it to be. It really is as simple as that. The why that sits beneath that is the meaningful significance that you assign to it. So with that in mind, what it is making sure that your choices and your decisions are aligned with your core values. And to know that it's purposeful, it does involve others. It involves how you are living with giving what it is that you have in terms of your strengths, your gifts, and seeing that being recognized as well. So there's multiple layers that come with this. And I remember it was something I read in, maybe it was the courage to be liked, or the courage to be happy. It was Alfred Adler, and he was a peer of Freud and Frankl. He said that all problems are interrelational problems. You wouldn't have problems if there weren't other people around, right? And so again, it's about identifying how you live your life alongside with, in accordance, in harmony with others. And yeah, I mean, this is your work now. We're starting to see how it both relates.
Well, it does. So, in terms of what I do as behaviours, the core of my business starts with the personalities, and I start with profiling. But I also do value. I don't do values like you do. That session that you've taken, if and honestly, anyone, if you're listening and you want to understand what your values are, get in contact with Amy. She's deep. It's deep work. But it's like you say, we don't know what our values are. I can help people understand personalities very quickly by looking at body language, tone of voice, that kind of stuff. So you can read people quite quickly. You can't read someone's values. So, I mean, people don't even know their I mean, some people don't even know their personalities, but people don't know their values. Where would you start?
So every interaction that you have with someone, you've got a meeting of two sets of values. So when I'm having this conversation, I'm coming at it from my values. Even if I'm not thinking about it, that's what's happening. You're having an interaction between two people. Your values are guiding your questions, your thoughts, your reactions, as are mine. And so when you think of every event or situation or conversation, that's what's going on. How are these values interacting? What is it that happens when you've got your two sets? So let's explain to the audience what mine are, and then you can share what yours are, and then maybe they can hear how this conversation unfolds with those values being brought to the forefront, because then they can see this in motion. So my values are brilliance, connectedness, diversity, effervescence, fun, and growth.
Yes,
And
they are.
yours?
I'm going to have to read them because I know my top three, but I've just done a session with Amy. This is the other thing, and I'm going to just say this now so we can disturb it, is the fact that our values will change in our life's experiences. So my top values are respect, freedom, balance, growth, positive impact, and harmony.
Amazing. So when you said that you do values differently to me, now you won't, because you know what the difference is in the way that I conduct a value session. You also know that there are many elements that guide you towards achieving and being aligned with each of those values. They're your roots too, the activities or the ways of being, the ways that you show up in everyday circumstances. Not necessarily are your values, they're the ethics, they're the morals, they're the ways that the strategies that you've got that take you towards achieving your respect, your freedom, your balance, your growth, your positive impact and harmony. And what's important about it, you said that they change. They do. What we're looking at specifically in this conversation are your life values. They are probably more fixed than you realize. The order might differ, but what probably does happen is that you might not honor them in your period of life that you're at in the order that you actually would like them to be. So when there is a moment where you're not feeling 100% in congruence with what's going on, you're sort of sitting in a bit of a state of this doesn't feel right, it's probably because you're not honoring them in a way that you're prioritizing what's most important for you. So it might be that you've prioritized positive impact over respect, or something like that. But there are values that sit in different areas of life. So yes, they probably change more so than your core life values. So when I'm talking to someone and we're talking about their work, then we would look at what are your work values, what's important in the context of work to you. And that those will change. Those will be different because how work evolves with how you see life differently throughout your period of time. So now we've got our meeting of values, Vicky, and the connectedness to diversity and the effervescence. I know that we both bring a lot of energy to a conversation. That will be met. The growth is aligned. The fun is aligned. So there's a lot of alignment there. Now let's look at freedom and connectedness. Where do you think they sit in a conversation between us?
Freedom, in terms of me asking you a question and giving you the space to answer it without
Yeah.
interrupting, because I hate that when I'm listening to podcasts. I just actually, I really dislike that when I see two humans having a conversation. Connectedness, because actually what we both do is connected with each other, which is why I think we have fallen into each other's worlds. Because we're about not just about having the freedom and connected in our own world, and it's not about us pushing values on other people either, because we've all got different values, but actually helping people to have the freedom to live their values. Helping people to have the freedom to understand their values is where we both drive from, I believe.
Yeah. So when I come to a conversation now, you said it's easier to read behavior. It's actually quite easy to read values because what you can do is just listen to what people are explaining or sharing, and you can hear how they are approaching. You can hear what they're saying. You can hear what they ask you. And often what they're asking you is important to them. So they want you to reciprocate and ask them about that as well. And how they approach a conversation, what it is that is important to them, is also highlighting and indicating to you what they value most. So actually, it is not as difficult to then come to a conversation and understand what someone's values are. Now, you can't mind read. That would be a fatal thing to do in a conversation because it's very rare that you get it 100% right. We're not mind readers. But you can ask people, what's important to you? What's important to you about, if you're having a conversation at a network event, you can say, what's important to you about coming here tonight? What was the reason for you coming? And it will tell you a lot about what's going on for them. You don't need to be a coach to ask these questions. You don't need to be someone who is asking the question outright. What are your core values? That would be an awkward conversation to have.
Weird.
But you,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. But you can listen, and you can also understand in that moment that what might be happening is that your values could be clashing. And so when there's something that someone's said that then triggers a reaction for you, and you then are feeling uncomfortable or angry or whatever, it tells you a lot about what's important to you. So notice that they've actually highlighted something that's been really helpful for you to understand more about what's important about yourself. So in a conversation, I'm quite relaxed when someone says something that I then respond and feel, oh, that's hit a mark. That's made me feel uncomfortable. It's so useful to then be reminded, oh, yeah, this matters. This is important. So instead of responding and sort of jumping back in and with that emotional response, take note, reflect, and then this is where the why comes in, because what you're doing is you're then seeing that emotional significance and how it's playing out in your own world. So yeah, it's this meeting of values is so much fun.
But I guess that it sits in the subconscious, doesn't it? So, like you say, we respond automatically with that emotional reaction rather than taking the pause to understand the why, because we're humans. That's how we go. So how could we help the people that are listening or watching to take that pause?
Yeah, this is something that takes a while as a practice to really embed into the moment, because what we're talking about here is somebody says something and you instinctively have a reaction. It happens. It's the the fight flight response in terms of, is this a danger? Is this a perceived danger? Do I need to respond? So it is sometimes not possible in the moment, because then you may have reacted, the other person has then responded, and you could then go into an argument state. So in the moment, yeah, it can be difficult. But that pause to reflect, okay, so what happened there? What was the reason for me responding that way? How else could I now respond, and what is it that I can then do? Because this is how your purpose and your why builds into your life. This is how your life unfolds. So in that moment where you, something happens, somebody says something, or something has triggered a particular reaction for you, you know that what's happened has been an emotional immediate response. Then you can then think, right, so now how can I respond differently that will try that will then give me another emotional response? So the why, that meaningful significance, is in the reflection, and then the purpose is seen in the subsequent action. And this is how your life unfolds. Through reflection with action, you get to constantly put in the meaningful significance of what's important to you, the why, that is the focus on why, that then is seen through your purposeful action. And that's how, going back to that question you asked me earlier, you create a purposeful way of life. It is a beautiful way of, in every moment, you have a choice. You have a choice as how you then subsequently reflect and then respond and take that into action, which then creates the next moment. And this is the beautiful way of how purpose can be seen and felt and visibly shown in your every action.
And that is so beautifully put. So I quite often say to people as well, like you talk about pausing to front, but I say to people, try and understand and recognize the triggers that change. Because we could be having a lovely conversation. We could be, and this has happened before. And most of us with our mobile phones will have a name. When the phone goes off, the name will come up. And how many times does a name come up on your phone that you're having a lovely time, you're having a really lovely conversation, and your phone goes and you go, oh, and just that name has changed your whole perception, your persona. And so I say to people, right, now stop and think, what is it about that person that is making you feel like that? Because there'll be people that you go, oh my God, sorry, I need to take this. And there'll be people who go, oh, answer phone. But you could be that person that someone else has that response to. When they say Vic O'Farrell come up, they go, answer phone. Or they could see Vic O'Farrell and go, oh, I want to speak to her. So
Yeah, and
I was going to say,
yeah.
how do you help people to understand their triggers?
Before I answer that question, what's it like when you see someone and you see them respond in that way when they have someone's name on a phone and it's ringing? Because how does it make you feel? Oh, I wonder what she does when I ring her, when I'm not there.
Mm,
So again, it's another awareness of what you're showing in that moment is your way of responding. And it gives the other person a lot of information about them in that very second, because it shows if they respond with love, or if they respond with sort of a disdain, or whatever it is. It's showing them a lot, showing you a lot about their
yeah.
responses and how they behave. So, in terms of helping with triggers, it's understanding what is it that's triggering that response for you? What is it that has happened in the past that has been unresolved and has been, for you, representing something that is not comfortable? And it's about actually addressing that uncomfortable moment, that
Mm,
uncomfortable truth, as opposed to I talk about this in the book, the uncomfortable truths versus the comfortable lies. Because when we address those uncomfortable truths, we're addressing the triggers that take us into a disempowered state. That disempowered state of where we are then in this uncomfortable space of not being in control of our particular emotion. Now, all emotions are useful. All emotions are incredibly useful because they tell us what it is that we need to deal with. And so then it's a case of, right, that has made me feel like this. And you're choosing to feel like that. This is a choice. That person hasn't made you feel like you're choosing to feel like that as a result of seeing that trigger. So it's about addressing what's important to you and how you are then responding, because you're choosing to take yourself into a disempowered state because of not actually facing what has happened for that reaction to occur.
So, for example, I mean, you wouldn't normally have people in your phone that you just don't speak to ever. But say you could have, I'm just as an example to people listeners, you could have maybe a family member that you've had a falling out with that you don't want to speak to because you still haven't dealt with the emotions of that fallout. So when their name appears, then you're looking at going, don't want to speak to you. Whereas you weren't like that before the argument. So how do you help people unpack the emotion attached to that?
It's a hard one, isn't it? It could be something as simple as write something in the address on that name. So write something on that label of, now's the time to take the call. You can resolve this issue. And so when that phone rings, instead of it saying the name of the person, it tells you the action, the state of where you need to be. Now's the time to take this call. This is important. And you've got this. So you can actually just change your state by reminding yourself that this is what you can do.
I'm laughing at that because there's one person in my phone. And so just a bit of context here, listeners and viewers. I'm currently on Amy's mastermind program, and we talk about how we should be on level 5 for most of the time. Level 10 takes us to that angry state, and level 1 takes us to that sad state. And I do have one person in my phone that I talked about, and I now have stay calm at level 5. And it's really helped, actually. It's really helped because there are people. I think the thing is when I'm really busy, and it's that, I suppose, being my core value being respect, is that I'm like, I just, if Mark walked in, Mark knows I'm recording a podcast between 10 and 11. Don't come home. Don't come into the house. But he knows full well if he can hear me talking and he really, really needed to get something, he'd just walk in, do it and walk back out again. And I wouldn't even acknowledge that he was here because he has done it. And that's fine. It's the respect of each other, of him not just, he'd keep the dog outside as well, because otherwise he knows the dog would come running in and that would disturb everything. And then I'd get angry because there's noise, because it's that noise thing for me. So if we come back to being able to read values, is it just the words that people use?
It's the words, it's then the stories that they relate to. So when I'm having a coaching conversation, the themes are underpinned and through the stories that people are sharing. So what happens is sometimes I'm listening to the story, and these could be over a period of sessions. You hear the same stories, which actually at the root of those is a theme, and that the stories are telling you what it is that they need some help with. So I then look at the themes, and these could be mostly based on self-worth. That they tend to be. Most coaching conversations are at the origin around that. So what is it telling me? What are these stories that they're sharing? The values are in those as well. So the values come out, and I'm looking for, and I'm jotting down the values of what's important here. And then you can see where the boundaries have been compromised, where somebody has found something difficult because they have compromised on their own values. And when that happens, and I can share with them, is that important to you to have honored your respect in that moment? They'll be like, absolutely. And then, so how else could you have brought that to the conversation? And it's just reflecting what it is that's happened, and then being able to see from that lens of your values how they were then compromised, because sometimes it's easy for me to see that and reflect it than it is for you to see that in your own scenario. So the stories are critical. So that's what I'm listening out for, is what is it they're sharing, and what is it about that particular story that is relevant to the issues they're facing.
Mm. And you mentioned boundaries there, because again, these are things that I don't believe people know. You know, when somebody feels like they're being compromised all the time, and I'll say that's because you haven't set boundaries. It's like, what, how do you set boundaries? So, how do you help people set boundaries around their values?
Again, it's understanding who you're able to serve, and I mean who is at the heart of your circle. You are the first person that you need to ensure your boundaries are not compromised. So understanding what's okay and what's not okay, what you're willing to tolerate and what you're no longer willing to tolerate, and making sure you have those conversations with the people that matter, and that could be very close friends or family, so that if something has happened and you're no longer willing to tolerate that occurring again, is having that open conversation. And it may be uncomfortable, but for you to honor your value, which is at the core of what's so important to you, it's really important to have that conversation and to illustrate that I'm no longer willing to allow this to happen anymore. So what is it that they can do to ensure that that boundary is kept? So yes, that's one step. For those who are peers or in your space, but not in your immediate circle, again, you don't have to apologize to someone if they've crossed a boundary, or you don't have to say yes to them, or you don't have to give them a reason as to why you say no. But it's important for you to know from an energy perspective that you don't have an unlimited resource of saying yes to everybody and doing everything and then resenting it. So what is it that you're going to get from saying yes to someone or from doing something, particularly in a workplace? If you do that, what is it going to be at the cost of? And that will help you to understand what your boundaries are, and also to help you explain to others what you're capable of doing and what you're not capable of doing. And when you have people who you don't need to make justify anything because you don't know them, or that it's not important for you to honor a particular commitment, or to say yes to something they've asked you to do, again, it's a simple no. I don't have the capacity to do that. And you don't need to give an explanation as to why. So I have very clear understandings of who sits in which space, so that when I'm having a conversation with them and I get asked to do something, I know whether it's an easy yes or an easy no. And that's how I create my boundaries. And if something does get compromised and it does trigger that emotion of anger, I'm like, oh, what's happened there? Which particular value has actually been compromised at this point? And then I can understand, okay, well, am I willing to let that go? Or is it something that I need to address? Yeah, those uncomfortable conversations are quite a current feature here, because it mean that actually sometimes facing them, dealing with them, enables you to move on, and so
Mm.
those triggers don't get a lot worse going forward.
And I think that's the thing, isn't it? If you don't address it, it just ends up going further and further and further, and then people then start throwing other things at it as well. And you're like, well, let's get it back to where it was. Um, so as we, oh God, I can't believe we're already coming to the end of our half an hour. I just want, so people are sitting thinking, oh, values, I'm really not sure about how I do this, and I don't know if I can get a session with Amy. What two questions would you give to the people who are watching or listening to just journal on, to perhaps understand their most their highest core value?
So they could reflect on a situation or a recent occurrence that has flagged an emotion of anger or frustration or justice, that sort of real, that's not fair, or I really bothers me, and or maybe has triggered compassion or love or something that is really strong, and I want to take action to help that. I want to do something as a result of. So watching the news is often a really good way of instigating what really matters to you. It's not a perfect way of eliciting your values. Having a conversation with a trained coach on this is ultimately the best. But to ask yourself the question, what is it that has instigated that particular emotion for me, and journal on that. What was the circumstances? What else was happening visually? What did you see on the news? What was occurring? Who did you see? How did you feel? And then really exploring the bigger picture there. What is it that I would like to do to ensure that doesn't happen again? So it's reflecting the why, the emotional significance, and then it's the action. What is it that I could do that will make a difference to changing that? So linking those two, the reflection with action in regards to simply watching the news, that is what you could do. Those are the questions you could ask yourself.
Fabulous. And if you could leave our listeners and viewers with one lasting piece of advice, what would that be?
In the context of the conversation we've had today, it would very much be know your values and live by them.
Wonderful. If people can get in contact with you, Amy, what is the best way for them to do that?
On socials, I'm on LinkedIn predominantly, so reach out there. If not, go to my website, amyrowlinson.com, and you'll find ways of connecting with me there too.
And all of Amy's details are in the show notes. Amy, it's been wonderful to have you here. Thank you for your time and your conversation and your wisdom.
Thank you very much, Vic. It's a pleasure.
How has this conversation had an impact on you? What have you learnt? What will you do differently? Do leave a review on Apple or Spotify on It Starts With You podcast. And also leave a comment down below. Do also then connect with me on social media. I'm on Instagram, Facebook and LinkedIn. And why not even join the Facebook group It Starts With You and keep the learning ongoing. Thank you for listening.